You've come a long, long way. You're not alone anymore. Come sit with me and tell me your story. You've come a long way, girl. Pulled yourself out of quite the mess. Those were some dark times back then, but it's all over now. You're not alone anymore. Come sit with me and tell me your story. This is Trucking with Tammy, where your journey's heard and your voice is free. You're not alone, come share your story with me.
Hi, welcome back to Trucking with Tammy, the podcast where we celebrate and empower drivers in the trucking industry. From the brand new drivers hitting the road for the first time to owner operators building their empires, small fleet owners scaling up, and everyone in between. So today's extra special because we're actually going to be diving into one of the biggest challenges and opportunities in trucking, your cash flow. So whether you're an owner operator, a small fleet, or a driver dreaming of getting your own authority and going independent because everybody wants to control their schedule, right? Factoring can be a game changer to keep your wheels turning without the stress. So I'm thrilled to welcome our guest, Andy Jones. Andy is the Director of Partnerships at Single Point Capital. Andy and his team specialize in freight factoring solutions that are designed specifically for trucking pros like you, owner operators, small to medium fleets, and even freight brokers. So, Andy, thank you so much for joining us today. I am so excited to hear how Single Point is helping drivers, especially women that are stepping into ownership, helping everybody stay independent, grow their business, and thrive out here on the road.
Thank you. It's an honor to be able to talk to you.
Right? It's been a while getting you on the show. So I'm really happy to be here. Getting information out on factoring, I think, is going to be a huge benefit for drivers.
Hopefully so. Yes, ma'am.
So why don't you tell the trucking world a little bit about who you are, where you come from, and how you got here?
Yeah, for sure. So growing up, my entire family was from South Louisiana. So I was born in Lafayette down there. Around 4 or 5 years old, we moved to Huntsville, Texas, which is really where I should say I'm from. So it's about an hour north of Houston. So kind of 1, 2, skip a few by chance. I have an older brother. Him and I picked up tennis somehow. Huntsville is not even remotely a tennis town, but that led both of us to our college tennis careers. He went up to West Point in New York. I went to Western Illinois, over close your way. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that was a weather shock for me, to say the least. But it was funny. My full plan was graduate college. I even catered my degree to it, to kind of facilities management and continue on teaching tennis at that point at Country Club, which I did for 3 years in Dallas. By chance, I networked with a gentleman and his family. They're pretty prominent in the oil and gas community in Texas, and he, through a conversation one day, kind of let me know, hey Andy, like I think you might be a really good landman, if you were to put the time to study in. And so a lot of conversations led to me studying, and a year or two later, I ended out in his office in Midland, Texas. So I was in oil and gas for probably 10 years, even leading up kind of right to COVID. And complete random on LinkedIn, I was at a bit of a crossroad in the career. The company had sold, so I was about to start looking for my next oil and gas role. But through LinkedIn, I got contacted by a factoring company. At that time, I had very little knowledge of the industry, what factoring was, and frankly, I didn't take it very serious at first. But COVID hit, and I went through a couple interviews, and a couple months later, they flew me up, this certain company, to meet their executive staff. I was really impressed by them. I think it was mutual. And they explained, hey, there's a big oil and gas kind of network. Obviously, in the transportation, there's a need for factoring within that. We'd love to start you there, then just kind of expand, your knowledge and client base from there. So we did that, and I stayed with them for years. They treated me so well. More recently, up until about, I believe it was May of 24, I left there, and they were a large company. And through a few reasons, and we can talk about those, I kind of had the urge to go to a smaller, mid-sized factoring company. A lot of that was what I was looking for, was more of a sound operational company. So more, I would say, customer focused and customer intensive. Answer the phone fast, take care of problems fast, get the carrier whatever they need, so not just kind of a huge, I guess you could call it like a cattle drive of tens of thousands of carriers, or your clients. I think it's a bit more healthy, at least from my perspective, to find someone, with somewhere between maybe 500 and 2,000. So, they have time for you, I would say. So that's how I ended up at Single Point. They reached out probably January of 24. And by that time in May, my wife and I moved from Dallas to Houston. So I've been with Single Point ever since.
Nice. So I'm going to go back a little bit because you threw in that landman comment, and everybody knows with Billy Bob Thornton and Landman on TV right now, which obviously it's Hollywood. But how does being a landman in real life compare to being a landman in that movie?
So there's a lot of similarities, to be honest. Specifically, a landman is a very vague term, first of all. A landman can be just an individual that goes researches courthouse records, and that's all they do, just to research title and who owns all the minerals, because they can be very,
Okay.
very severed between parties and even between depths under the land, under the surface. So it's really
Right.
complicated, that job, and it's tough. A landman can also be, and this is what I ended up as, more of a acquisition and divestiture landman. So buying, selling, trading, packages of acreage to oil and gas operators who will, drill on them, right? Um, and then
So
there's
more
also
of
a
a real
surface.
estate. It's almost like a real estate back kind of
Absolutely.
a broker, just
Nothing
specialized.
short of it. I was doing it for an operator, but even trading land with a different operator can be really valuable to you both, especially with horizontal drilling, longer laterals that you're drilling a few miles. If you don't lease, the land north and south, you're kind of limited to the number of wells you can drill. But anyway, um,
Especially when the oil and gas is over on their side.
exactly. Yeah, exactly right. So there's also more common these days, probably in particular with that show, is what's called a surface landman. And this can be kind of your run and gun, kind of even dangerous role, where you're actually going out talking to the people who own the surface on the land that you're about to drill. And a lot of times they may not be the owners of the minerals under it, right? So
Right.
maybe they want you there, and maybe they don't. And if they don't, they probably really don't. What if there's crops on their land, or things like that? So it can get really hairy and messy, and there's a lot of stories about trucks getting shot at, entering a gate, and you name it. So,
Yep.
but I did it out in West Texas. It's an oil and gas community. We didn't have too much of that. It's the role is very welcoming out there, I would say.
Yeah, in trucking, I actually just talked to a woman here about a week or so ago that had went through Midland for the first time, and it is still the Wild West in some
It is.
areas out there. And one of the jokes with women drivers is when you go to that area, there's about 1,000 men for every female, so it is a little
Totally true.
overwhelming. And so she was like, "How do I deal with this? Being the only girl here?" But it is a whole different ballpark down there. So that is interesting that you have that in your history.
For
So
sure. I will give some credit, just really quick. It probably, of all the cities I've lived in, Midland might have been the best community I've been a part of, for sure. Everybody sticks together, takes care of each other, watches out after each other, kind of holds each other accountable, even professionally. So it was really wonderful for my professional development to be out there for a few years.
that is awesome to hear that Midland is a good. I've never had a bad experience down there myself. So
Yeah.
so besides being a landman, tell us something fun about yourself. Andy, what besides being the professional?
Right now it's fun, but it's hard. We have a 14-month-old at home. It's our first child. We just got him, oh god, goodness, over hand, foot, and mouth a few weeks ago. We just got over another the 50th sinus infection from daycare. So we're just deep down in the weeds, but we're enjoying every minute of it. It's fun no matter how hard it is. And we have a second on the way here in 2 months. So we're about to double
Oh,
that up
you're
and
diving in.
really, yeah, really go for it. Yeah.
My first and second were 6 years apart, so I have no I mean, it's a lot to have them that close together, so I guess if you're gonna jump into parenting, head first is a great way to do it.
Yeah, I'm 40, so it's time to move on. And
Oh, yeah, you
yeah.
waited. So,
Mhm.
now let's talk about the factoring. Can you explain to the drivers what exactly freight factoring is and why it's important to have as an owner operator?
Absolutely. So if I'm sure there's tons and tons of people out there thinking about starting, their own freight company. They're running their own MC. One of the quickest struggles you'll see that they'll probably have is cash flow on day one, right? So they'll talk to a broker, book a load, uh, fuel up on diesel, insurance is paid at that point, run that lane, burn the diesel, get their products delivered, and then immediately you're looking for your next load, right? And you may go halfway across the country on this next load and burn more diesel that you're paying for. So, what a lot of people don't know from the start is these brokers that you're dealing with, they're your best friends for the most part. That's where you find your business, probably maybe 90% of it. But you don't get paid, I would say, usually until about 30 or 40 days after you make that delivery. So from here, we can imagine, well, how do I stay operational unless I have tens of thousands of dollars already for 30 or 40 days just burning through capital, right?
Right.
So that's where factoring companies come into play immediately. So I would suggest finding a factoring company before your MC even goes active. Might as well just have that step done. Um, if it's a good factoring company, you can use them when you need them. You don't have to factor every load for every customer. Use it when you need it. Is what I would always recommend. If someone requires you to factor every customer, I may back away. But the big advantage is once you make that delivery, you typically upload just your two forms: the BOL, the proof of delivery, and the rate confirmation that you get before the load is actually picked up. Uh, Give it to us once you make that delivery, and then we pay you on that load less a very small fee within 24 hours of us receiving those documents. So immediately you have your cash for that load straight to your business bank account, ready to deploy for any other capital needs that you need to stay on the road. Maybe you own that MC, but you're not driving yourself, and you want to pay your driver really, really quick to keep them happy, keep them,
Yep.
employed within your business instead of going somewhere else, even for a little more money. So, factoring can solve a number of issues.
It can. So there's a lot of fraud in the industry. And when I owned my small fleet, I had 3 trucks and I factored. Some of the brokers, offer their own quick pay features
Mhm.
for, with a percentage cost. But the other ones, I mean, they can take 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days to pay. And with factoring, you're able to get that much quicker. But with the amount of fraud in the industry, I had to make sure that the broker was accepted prior. Do you have that same process where you have to make sure that the broker is someone that you will do factoring with?
You absolutely do. We call it a broker credit check system. It's available on our factoring portal that any client would have access to. And to be very honest, I would call it a free insurance policy almost more than anything, because maybe it seems like a pain to look up a broker to see if they're approved with your factoring company. But again, if it's a good factoring company, they have a very good credit team who's keeping their eyes and ears out all day, every day for bad actors, bad brokers, right? So the reason we really want the carriers to do that and almost basically require it is, what if we've already identified that that broker is fraudulent, correct? So you're not going to get paid on that load, but you may not even know it. But if they're denied in our credit check system, we might have just helped you avoid running 2,000 miles for a load that you're never going to get paid on, you know.
Right, right.
So
Yeah.
that's why that's in place. The other reason would be, you know, brokerages, their businesses just like anybody else, and sometimes they go downhill and out of business. So we keep constant track of their days to pay. You know, if it goes from within, let's call it 3 months, just hypothetically, um, 30 to 90 days that they're paying carriers, that's a real red flag of, oh my goodness, you know, are things going downhill over there? Are they going to go belly up with all these open invoices that they owe to carriers and factoring companies and never be able to pay out, you know? So
Right.
that's why the credit check system's there. It's honestly for the carrier's own benefit.
Yeah, I've had to file against a bond before for a broker. So I think that's one thing that a lot of carriers and people, when they first come out here, they don't understand the pitfalls with dealing with brokers. And there's so many overnight brokers that pop up and come on the scene and double brokering, and being able to do that credit check. You know, you may think, oh my gosh, this is a great paying load and I don't want to lose this load because
Hmm.
look at this money. But there's a reason that that money is out there, and it's because nobody else will deal with them. And you know, if you can't get your money, it doesn't matter how good the load is.
That's exactly right. And what I tell all my clients very, very often is, even if you're about to run a load that you know you're not going to need us to factor for you, which is great. We encourage that anytime the carrier is able, still run them through the credit check system, because again, if they're denied, it's for a very good reason. It's never, never random.
Right. So if somebody wanted to get set up with single point, um, what does the process look like for new people that are getting their MC, or somebody who's already out there that wants to switch over?
Yeah, we keep it very simple. So there's a one-page application. The great part about the application process, one, is it's always free. You're never going to pay us a dime for any of this. Even if you do get approved, you're not paying us anything up front or anything to set up your account or maintain it. It's just when you factor the factoring fee, you know. Otherwise, we're also not checking any credit, whether that's business or personal, because again, we're more focused on the broker's credit because that's who's paying us back from all the money that we're fronting to our clients, right? So that's where
Right.
our focus is really at. So, you know, even if your personal credit is just, you know, not where you would want it to be, we're not looking at that. We're looking at, you know, background history, making sure there's no UCC filings on you or your, you know, new MC, which there sure shouldn't be if you're a new MC. And if you're clearing those two hurdles, you'll get approved and your account will be ready next day.
Right. So for people who don't know, a UCC filing, normally when you take out certain types of loans, the loans then have a lien on any of your income coming in. So then a factoring company wouldn't be able to factor because the UCC filing company gets it first. So that would prohibit you from collecting, correct?
That's exactly right. So factoring companies, they must be in first UCC position. So if there's already an existing UCC on that prospective client, it would either need to be subordinated, you know, put from first position down to second to make room for the factoring company to take over first, or just simply terminated. You know, a lot of the UCCs, you know, let's say there was a loan and that individual did pay it off. A lot of times the loan companies kind of neglect that UCC and leave it hanging. But it really should have been terminated already. So we can also help with that. You know, reach out to whatever company that is, put in the request for the carrier, and take care of all that.
Yeah. I imagine with freight rates being the way they've been, I've heard a lot of instances where, companies, small fleets, drivers are taking advantage of some of these high interest loans and getting into predicaments. So it's good that they understand how that works with factoring, especially if, they're wanting to switch factoring for that reason, to know that they are limited when that filing
Yeah,
is out there.
that's exactly right. If someone's out there looking to start their business and they're looking for, I would say, a business loan, I would make triple sure that you're not signing up your business loan probably with a MCA loan, because the interest rates can be incredibly high. Of course, that UCC filing is going to be hanging on you until you pay that off, which could be years. So then, you know, now at this point, you don't even have access to factoring companies. You've kind of already wiped that option off the table in theory, you know. So I would really probably stay away from those. if you can, find your operating costs to start up somewhere else, because it is hard, right? You know it better than I do, running your own MC at one point, how much money it probably does take to get up and running between the
A
trucker
lot.
trucks, all the insurance, all the filings you're making, hundreds of dollars here and there, and things you never even think about. So yeah, I mean, some people may just do what they have to do, but if you can avoid the MCA loan route, I probably would.
So I'm just gonna put this out here because a lot of people they don't realize how much money you need. I had 3 trucks, and my philosophy, I was always told when I came out here, it was a good business practice to have back 20,000 per truck. That's a good dollar amount. So that's about give or take what I kept. And I want to tell you, in a 6-month time, I had so many repairs that it wiped out my reserves with just months. I mean, we had some huge, big repair bills, and people don't understand. I, I've replaced starters in cars, right? Couple $100, labor. It cost me $7,000 to replace a starter and rails in a semi. And, I always like to say trucking is big numbers in, but it's also really big numbers out. And you have to do your homework to understand exactly how much everything costs because it's crazy. It's not like a passenger vehicle at all.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And especially a couple of years ago, we saw a huge influx of maybe more than ever new entities hitting the market, new trucking companies. Um, and I would say that's a big reason we also saw the same kind of huge uptick in companies not making it past the 6-month mark. I think a lot of those people weren't patient maybe on the front end to get their company started and on the road, and didn't have the kind of savings behind them for exactly what you said. Because even if your unit is brand new, something can still go wrong on day two, right? And if you don't
Right.
have that $4,000 or $7,000 ready and available to take care of that, keep you on the road, then it was a short run. So in terms of getting on the road, financially, I would stay patient until you do have that backing behind you to keep you comfortable for the rainy days. Because, again, you know better than I do, they're coming, I'm sure.
They are. And when you have a unit down and it goes in the shop, you have more than just the shop costs. You have if you have a driver in that truck, you have the driver's salary for being breakdown pay. You have their hotel, you have the loss of revenue, and you still have insurance, truck payments, and everything else that you have to cover. So a lot of people don't think of the whole big picture with it, which is important. Now, I do know with factoring when we talked, there is cash advances. I am 100% against taking cash advances on fuel cards or factoring, but it is because it's a catch. I mean, you just get in a vicious cycle. But you guys do offer that
we
ability.
We do, yes. Just to keep the option available for the carrier, what the cash advances typically look like is once the carrier has their rate con for the load that they're about to run, if they want, and I believe there's maybe a $20 or $30 fee, will advance half of that rate confirmation, the amount that they're going to get paid on that load to them before they pick up the load, right?
So
Some
even
people
before
need
they pick it up,
even before they pick it up, as long as the rate confirmation is valid, maybe we'll call the broker and just confirm really quick and take 5 minutes to do that. But, some people need that are running on very, very, thin margins for, their next tank of diesel to pick up that load.
right?
I'd call that hard times at that point. But I am with you as well. It's certainly one of those things. If you don't have to do that, then don't do it.
No, because once you're already robbing Peter to pay Paul at that point.
Yes.
And it's hard to get back ahead. So in factoring, there's a few things that people need to know about factoring. One of them is that there are two main types, recourse and non-recourse. Would you mind explaining the difference between the two?
Yeah, and you're kind of hitting a really huge topic, I would call it, in the factoring industry as well, because there's a lot of constant debate over it. So, in
Mhm.
theory, what non-recourse is, um, is if a broker doesn't pay your factoring company back, we're kind of implying that you're not liable for that same amount of money to pay your factoring company back and make them whole, right? That would be non-recourse factoring. So if you have a recourse contract, on the other hand, if the broker or shipper doesn't pay your factoring company back, then you do have to make the factoring company whole, right?
Hmm.
In some form or fashion. If unfortunately that does happen some,
It does.
but if you have a good factoring company, they will not ask you to pay that same amount to them tomorrow. They're going to help you make a plan. They don't want you to hurt you financially. Yes, it's a bad situation and everyone wishes it wouldn't happen, but hey, let's spread out that, let's call it $1,000, on your next 10 invoices that you factor, and it'll help lighten the blow there. But more specifically, we're very, I mean, basically nothing short of lenders, right, on the factoring
Hmm.
side. So
Right.
really the real question is, and there's this kind of been this term to pop up, true non-recourse, right? And that's what we were just talking about a second ago, on implied non-recourse. But the question would be, what lender have you ever heard of that, if they lend you $10,000 for X, Y, or Z, but you don't pay it back, the lender will just go, oh, well, bummer, moving on, we'll try it again with somebody next time, and maybe we'll make our money back at that point. So again, with factoring basically butting right up against lending, that my personal full belief is there is truly nothing in our industry, in terms of true non-recourse, right? If
Right.
there is, they have to put certain, like, very strict limitations on who you're actually running with, like only 10 or 20-day debtors, things like
Mhm.
that. They're going to be hurtful for your business too, because now you don't have a lot of choices for clients. So eh, to kind of finish this topic, what I would say recourse or non-recourse actually does cover, the only thing, and if I'm a carrier, I'd still prefer to have it, is if the broker goes bankrupt while that invoice is still open and not paid out to the factoring company yet.
Okay.
So you would be covered in that situation.
Right. So I've seen a lot of misinformation when it comes to this topic. So I think it's really important when
Mhm.
people are starting out and they don't understand what non recourse is, because I think it's explained very differently and incorrectly. And they get themselves in situations and then they think that they aren't responsible. And a lot of the situations that I've heard are, one, they factor it and then for some reason the broker sends them a check. So then they've been double paid. And, that means the factoring company has to be paid back.
Right.
Two, there might be a discrepancy between the initial contract with the broker and what actually was paid out, whether they were deducted late fees, whatever the situation is, if there was a claim. So, the initial contract might have there might be deductions that the broker takes out, sometimes unknowingly to the driver. So in that case, those are also chargebacks, correct?
Of course, yeah, yeah. There always will be. What I would recommend with all this kind of new knowledge in mind, what I would recommend to the carrier as you're shopping for a factoring company is make that one of the first questions you ask. Are you a recourse or non-recourse contract? Because in my eyes, doing this for the last quite a few years, if a sales rep tells you, "Hey, we're a true non-recourse company," I might decide just to go ahead and run away, because I don't know if I could trust that, to be honest.
Right, right.
It's just not how it works. It's truly, truly not. So that's a good litmus test to ask a factoring rep, a factoring sales rep, to see maybe if they're being very truthful with you or not. Because just like you mentioned, there's bad actors on the brokerage side. There's bad actors on the carrier side sometimes,
Mhm.
and there's also bad actors on the factoring side sometimes. You need to be able to sniff all of them out, in every
Right.
realm. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very, very important. So your you have an app, right? So you've made it easy for drivers, especially if they have carriers, they have their own drivers. They can just take a picture of the bill of lading and bill of lading. I can't even talk. Bill of lading and upload it through the app for payments. And typically 24 hours. What situations will make the payment to the carrier take longer than the 24 general hours?
Yeah, so that's a great question. One would be not a good picture, right? We need to know what invoice we're about to front the money for. So, if it's a really blurry picture or if it's just a half of a page and, there's a lot of text and there's 3 pages behind that, but all we have is a half a page, well, we can't fund that invoice, if we can't read the entire thing. So, if it says page 1 of 4 up top and we only have page 1 and 2, then we can't fund yet. We need to see page 3 and 4. The other would be, and this is typical when you first start factoring, and this is kind of good to set these like kind of, I guess, expectations. One very important document that you know about well, Tammy, is the notice of assignment, right? So
Yep.
factoring companies have to give your customers, and you can do it yourself too, just to expedite things, a 1 page document called the notice of assignment. And that's the really important document that's telling that customer, hey, when you are good and ready to pay, even if it's in 60 days, pay the factoring company back. Here's our information to do so. Don't double pay the carrier like you were explaining earlier.
Right.
So when factoring companies turn that in to the carrier's broker, let's say, one thing we do need is just a one-time and one-time only verification that they received it, they have it filed, they know where the payments are going to go from now on, and then once we get that, then great. There's some very large brokers out there that are just operationally a bit backed up. They may not give us that verification for 6 hours and they may not give it to us for 24 hours, right? So we just hit that 24-hour mark already. So that's certainly one thing that can delay it too. Other than that, I would say just whether it's accidental mistakes, on those paperworks, we've seen an extra 0 added or deleted that we've called and kind of sniffed out.
There's
Things like
actually
that.
an extra 0 is a big deal. So
Yeah, it's a huge deal. Yeah.
huge.
Yep. And then while we're on the paperwork topic as well, a little off topic, one huge, just very, I think, valuable piece of advice that sounds so simple, but it would really save a lot of carriers a lot of fraud and headaches, is always check the email address domain on your rate confirmation. If you ever see a at outlook.com or at gmail.com, any of that, I would really, really, really review everything that's happening and make sure it's not fraud, hopefully through a broker credit check system, because I believe any reputable broker will have their own, at tql.com,
I
on
mean, I
that.
got at trucking with Tammy, so I would expect any broker I would be dealing with to be better than I am running a podcast. So
Yeah, but it happens all the time, kind of in the realm of fraud, where you'll see those email domains, and within 2 seconds, this is not a load that you're going to run and get paid on,
no.
unfortunately. Yeah.
So, what about a scenario where the shipper, the addresses don't match from the rate confirmation to the bill of lading? How is that handled? Because that
So
happens, and I want drivers to understand that this is a scenario that they should be prepared for.
Absolutely, because how many times have you had a driver on the road, whether they're halfway there or even 2 miles away, but then the delivery address changes kind of on a
Yep.
dime sometimes. So yes, that's part of our verification, but the solution's very easy. Same thing. All we need to do is just make a quick check call to that broker. Like, hey,
Okay.
we have the rate confirmation to so and so address, but we noticed on the BOL it's not matching. Is everything okay on your end? And they'll give us the thumbs up very quickly normally, and then we just continue to move forward toward funding.
So you don't need like an updated rate confirmation with the correct addresses or anything
Yeah,
generally, or
they'll
maybe.
usually they'll send it to us like during that
Okay.
call, usually live. Yeah, it
Okay.
certainly
I just
wouldn't
want
hurt.
Are there any other scenarios that carriers should be aware of that may delay minus the ones we've already discussed?
There's not many. just as long as, one very, very important thing uh, that does kind of relate to this is have a pre-conversation if you have one, and I really hope you have one with your factoring account rep, as you're introduced to them. So we take the approach of a dedicated account rep. So it's a one-on-one relationship. You're going to get to know them very well. Some other companies do the team approach where, hey, you're going to call this number and one of 9 people may answer. And then
Yeah, I'm not a
unfortunately,
fan of that.
I know. And then, of course, some companies unfortunately just have a 1-800 number and that's it, and really no
Mhm.
great support. And that'd be the worst case. But even with the team approach, what you'll find is, hey, I'm in the middle of this like really complex issue, with this broker maybe. Um, and it would be really valuable if I could get who I spoke to 10 minutes ago, but now they're all booked up and on the phone for the next hour. And I've got to talk about this entire situation over from scratch, to this new sales rep. So we take the one-on-one approach, and I would really recommend just having a conversation with them up front before you book your first load. Hey, can we walk through this really quick? What do you expect out of me for very, very expedited funding to help you guys out? What hurdles, or kind of what roadblocks, have you seen people hit that I can maybe avoid when it comes to all this paperwork and the communication with the brokers? Because it is as simple as it seems. It can be really complex sometimes, right? But if you have a good working relationship with your account rep, even if you do hit these little roadblocks or bumps in the road, you're going to get over them very, very quickly because you and him or her are already on the same page from day one.
And
And the
that's
other part,
but
sorry, that I would add is that account rep is kind of your champion, right? They
right.
are your biggest fan. They want you to hurry up and get paid as fast as possible, and that's kind of how they're graded as well, on their job a lot of times. But um, they have your best interest in mind, for sure. So just lean on them as much as you need to.
And that's gonna lead me to my next question. So, you guys don't just do factoring and, dealing with brokers, you also have a logistics side as well, and a fuel card side. Now, how is your logistics side set up? Are you able to provide that information today?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So Single Point Capital, that's our factoring arm. Single Point Logistics is our brokerage. We're all in the same office. We all work together a lot. The unique thing about the brokerage, I guess from starters, they're really experts on heavy hauls. That's primarily the largest percentage of loads that they're brokering out is, heavy machinery or oversized loads, things like that. They certainly do a good number of dry van loads, hot shots. So there's plenty of diversity there, but the focus and the biggest part of the book of business over there is certainly the heavy haul part. What we've done though, which I think is unique, is as those loads are becoming available, we always put them in front of our factoring clients first, because that's who we want to take care of if we can,
Mhm.
at least give them the option, and see when they're available. We know what equipment they have and this and that. So we'll put it in front of them before we even put it on any public load board, period. So, if X amount of time goes by and that load's not booked, then we'll go ahead and bring it public, and it usually will get booked within a couple hours from there. But we want our factoring clients staying busy and profitable, obviously. So there's a really good synergy there to help them out.
Which leads to my next question. What about new authorities? Are you able to help new authorities out?
Yeah, we do. Usually, we like to wait just instead of a 90-day period. A lot of times, I'd call it between 30 and 60 days of the MC going active. Um, if they're a factoring client of ours, they're probably more liable to maybe get that load booked on day one of their authority, because at that point we know them, we've vetted them out already, days ago, and everything's already approved. So there's a lot less risk in our eyes there than dealing with a carrier that we just got introduced to on the phone 5 seconds ago, that's 3,000 miles away and hasn't ran a load yet. So
Yeah.
there's definitely some flexibility there for sure.
I think people who are just coming out and getting their authority do not understand the logistic side of it for new authority, and how a lot of brokers do not want to or will not work with you 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, 1 year, up to 2 years. I mean, the really good brokers, they want experience under your belt. So having an option for new carriers is very important when you're out looking, and especially considering a factoring company that has that extra little benefit for you.
For sure, yeah. So that our load boards on our portal, the same factoring portal that we talked about before, along with that broker credit check system. So obviously, we want nothing more than our clients to get paid and get paid quick and be as profitable as possible. So we're constantly trying to think of new tools. And that brokerage was a huge one to add to our, let's call it, little arsenal to help profitability, help everybody stay busy. And you mentioned the fuel cards. We partnered with a third party company to provide those, just to help our carriers cut costs as well.
Right, because we talked about money coming in, right? And it's really important on how you handle that cash flow coming in, but your money going out is just as important. And one of our largest expenses is our fuel. So, how does your fuel, so it's an actual discount program, correct?
It is correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And how does it work? And what's,
Yes.
the average savings? I know we talked about it on the phone, but if you could kind of share that, because I was really impressed with what you have going on.
For sure. So the kind of, I would say, most important features of the fuel card are, first, the premier station on there that, let's say, kind of runs the show across the map is TA, right? So all the TAs you'll have access and discounts to, and then there's probably about 6 to 7 thousand, I would call them, more regional stations behind those. The TAs, those are going to be really good for your longer stops and, even showers and things like that. These regional stations will be your quicker stops, but a lot of times they have a higher discount. So on average, between the program as a whole, you're looking at typically somewhere between 45 and 48 cents per gallon. So if you're running your, let's say, full size dry van 5 days a week, even, you should be saving quite a few hundred, if not, $1,000, $1,200 a month, just from that amount of fuel savings alone. And, what else can you imagine you can do with 1,200 or 1,500 extra dollars a month if you're, owner of a one truck company? There's a lot of things you can do. And if nothing else, put it behind in that savings that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah. So is this a contracted rate, or does this is it something that is contract, like, let me make sure I word this correctly. The rates off are contracted for a time period, or is this a fluctuating rate depending on what prices are?
Exactly right. So it's basically, I'd say, the simplest way to explain it is it's based off of live supply and demand almost. If a fuel stop has a big shipment of fuel coming in 2 days, but they still have 30% capacity, they're probably going to really, really cheapen their fuel for their diesel discount clients, to hurry up and try to you know get rid of that fuel before they fill up their huge tank underground again, right? So
Right.
it's all live, and there's a tool on the app that's so beneficial to the carrier, where they can type in their lane they're about to run for the day. Let's say Houston, Oklahoma City. It'll show them on their route all the fuel stations on that lane that have discounts within the network, and what the actual discounts and final price is that day. So that really helps the driver be more calculated on, hey, I was going to stop here, let's say in Huntsville, Texas, at 30 cents off per gallon. But I did see, if I drive 20 more miles up to Madisonville, Texas, they're 55 cents off per gallon today. So I'm going to go ahead and make that extra few miles and save, probably $100 or more.
Do you, So I'm going to ask this because I'm a numbers girl. You wouldn't happen to add in or put what the fuel tax is for that state too, so you actually know the fuel tax and the cost after that state's fuel tax?
I don't believe it does. I don't believe it
That
does
would be a
that.
great benefit,
That
especially
yeah,
for
that would be
for
amazing.
carriers who really pay attention to that, because a lot of people don't realize when they buy that cheaper gas that some states also have a lot lower motor tax fuel.
Mhm.
And so you might be paying actually more per gallon in fuel than another state who has a higher motor fuel tax. So
Exactly
just
right. I would say one other piece of advice too when it comes to fuel discounts is I think a lot of people, they'll log into their app, whether it's ours or anyone else's, and they'll see, okay, 55 cents off per gallon here, 30 cents off there. Well, I know where I'm going to go, right? But what matters more, obviously, is the bottom line. You
yep,
can make the mistake of that 55 cents off puts you at a bottom line of $3, but actually that station that had 30 cents off, now they're only 265. So you kind of made a little mistake there. So bottom
yep,
line,
yep.
kind of exactly like you're saying, it is all that really matters.
That it does. So, with your fuel discount program, what I know you said is your 40 some cents is the average. W- for just to for transparency, what is the lowest generally that you can expect? Do you have like a certain amount, or the lowest you'll see is going to be 10% off or 12%, or will you maybe sometimes see less than that off?
And this is not a selling point. This is just a data point. I would say I've
And that's what I
seen it
want. Yeah.
one. Yes, go. I've seen it go all the way up to $1.75. I think one time even $1.95 off per gallon. Now, what caused that situation? I'm not sure, but obviously that's not a discount that the carrier would expect to be hanging out there for days at a time, right? It's a little irrational, and there's some maybe anomaly situation in there, but again, it's all relative to supply and demand, so it's something in that realm. So no, you're not going to expect that, and anybody who's going to market, $2 off of diesel is probably full of it, I think, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that the average that you should be expecting when you do your monthly accounting, 45 to 48 is a good little soft spot there. That's very doable.
That's good. Okay. Because sometimes, you see less amount, or and this was my own personal experience. When I first came out, before I got the fuel card that I was the happiest with, I checked out a couple different programs, and it'd say 10, 12%, but then you'd get out there and most of them were four, so
Mhm.
you really aren't saving that much. Um, and especially when you're competing with systems like Mudflap, um, that came out and, negotiated with all the little independents, but you're able to offer, a much better discounted rate, it seems.
Yeah, and on that note, it has to do, if you're the carrier, with asking the right questions, right? Because if you see that, hey, $1.65 off per gallon, come use our fuel card, they're kind of maybe trying to trick you into actually thinking you're going to get $1.65 off of every gallon that you buy within their network, right? Maybe across the
Right.
nation. And unfortunately, factoring can be the same way. You get a flyer or an email that says, hey, you have a one truck box truck startup company and you get an email that says, hey, come factor with us for 2%. Anybody really in the real factoring world knows that, a startup one truck company probably isn't getting a 2% rate. So you're getting hooked in there, I would bet, right? And what
Right.
unfortunately comes after that is all these hidden fees, and even invoices. They'll call it like an invoicing fee and all this that you didn't see in your contract, but it is there, unfortunately. And now, when you do your end of the month accounting that we keep talking about, you could expect your actual factoring rate to be between 4 and 5%. And you're really bummed out at that point. So there's a lot of questions to ask up front to your factoring sales rep to make sure that you know what you're getting. Nothing's going to change. Um, and I have a lot of these questions written down too, if you want to go through some of them.
We're going to. I have a couple
Mhm.
more before we get to
For
theirs.
sure.
So does your factoring services scale with business growth? So do you have like a higher percentage for smaller, and then as you grow, the percentage reduces then?
That's exactly right. So there's two scenarios that usually happen, and it's relative to flat rates or I guess like kind of growth rates. You can call them growth tiers. So you can have a flat rate contract, and somewhere between 3 and 4% maybe isn't the craziest starting point, for a carrier to have their factoring rate at, depending on your trailer type and some other factors. Um, but what I would recommend if I'm the carrier is negotiating in growth tiers right off the bat. So it's usually always volume based, and by volume we mean dollars factored per month, right? That's always the biggest metric of factoring companies to figure out which rate is the most appropriate. So, I would build in there, hey, if I have 0 to $15,000 factored a month, yeah, Andy, I'll take your offer, but I want a tier at 15 to 30 to be, 0.15% less than that, then, 30 to 50, another discount after that, just to encourage growth, right?
Right.
And it's really mutually beneficial because it helps the carrier as they grow. It also rewards them as they grow. And then from my standpoint, on the factoring side, it helps me not have to renegotiate contracted rates, every single term as we're reaching those points in the year, right? So it's a lot less
Right.
clerical work on me, and there's value in that, So I would always, if I could, push toward a tiered rate for the most part. But that being said, same thing we're talking about earlier. If you have a good factoring company, you can maybe call them midterm. Hey, Andy, look what I've been doing. Like I grew. I'm really happy about it. Can you throw me a bone? Yes, of course we can.
Hey Andy, I'm adding a third truck, and so
Yes.
this means my factoring is going to go up, and I need a better rate.
Yep, that's exactly right. Because also at some point, if we don't give it to them, someone else will, and we don't want to lose
Mhm.
them. So
Right,
yeah,
right. It's a very
there's
competitive market.
there's
So
healthy competition for sure. Yeah,
yeah. Okay. So, at Trucking with Tammy, we're all about educating drivers and making sure that they know what they need to look for and ask. And as you said, you have a list of questions that carriers need to ask factoring companies when they're looking for the right factoring company for them. So, have at it. This
for
is all
sure.
you.
So step one, what I would say is you're going to get a lot of calls from, when your DOT goes public, you're going to get calls from certain factoring companies, from
Calls,
insurance agents,
texts,
from
emails.
dispatchers, from people acting like they're brokerages, trying to scam you into taking their lanes that they don't have. So your phone's going to blow up. But when you do hit the time where you have time to focus on, okay, what factoring company am I going to use? I would use two methods. One, if you have a network, always use it. Always lean on your network for the good and the bad feedback of whatever company you're thinking about. Even an insurance agency or whatever else it could be. There's nothing more important than your network and building up that network that you trust. Second, I would say go ahead and use Google reviews and any other review site that you can to your advantage. Most of the time, they're pretty accurate, and you can kind of avoid a lot of bad situations just by taking the time to research an hour or two worth of reviews. I would say right now there's maybe 400 to 500 freight factoring companies out there, so you're probably not going to be able to research them all, but the ones you can do. So once you start making your own calls to the factoring companies, um, grill them, and don't feel bad about grilling the sales rep. To me, we're fortunate to have the carrier as our client. It's not the other way around. So demand their time. If they don't have the time for you to answer your questions, then you're hitting a red flag already, right?
Yeah, if they don't have
Um,
the time for you to get your business, they're not gonna have the time for you to keep your business. So
that's
we
exactly
have to.
right. Yep, and you really need their attention, while you're live out in the road. So if you can't get it from a sales rep, you're not going to get it from an account rep. So anyway, first question: is there a contract? Um, as weird as this sounds, if the answer is no, I would perk up my eyebrows a little bit, right? Because
Run.
you're probably being lied to. We talked just a few minutes ago of, hey, we're all bordering on, or actually are lenders, right? What, what lender doesn't use a contract, so
So legally, and I'm going to interrupt you for a minute. So legally, without a contract, then they're not able to legally get a notice of assignment, are they?
that's exactly right. Yeah, and they
Okay.
shouldn't be filing a UCC filing on you either. So that's step one. Step two, what is the contract term length? There's 1 year is usually kind of the gold standard of the factoring contract term length. Sometime maybe a factoring company is trying to negotiate with you. Hey, you want this lower rate than we're actually offering. All right, signing a 2-year contract. I would I would be hesitant to do that unless you know people there and they've already vouched for that factoring company, so you are probably a little bit safe, operationally. Um, Otherwise, you have some factoring companies that'll offer month to month and, maybe a 3-month term. Those are typically the ones that you're going to get stuck with a higher rate on, because they're assuming they're going to have your business for a less amount of time in theory, right? So you might get stuck with a higher rate on those. So I would reasonably look for, maybe a 6-month or a 1-year contract is probably what you're wanting to target. And once you figure that out, the next question is, okay, what is my termination notice? And this is a very important question, right? Because a lot of people will sign up with a factoring company and get stuck beyond the year that they thought they were because there's a termination notice period for us all. Ours is 60 days, prior to your contract ending that 1 year. We just need a 60-day notice of, hey, I'm going to go somewhere else, or hey, thank you guys so much, but I just don't need factoring anymore. But that's not spoken about a lot, unfortunately, in the industry up front. So, Tammy, you start your trucking company and you're factoring with XYZ company, you're in a year contract. The month before your year is up, hey guys, like, thank you so much, but I'm going to make a move. Sorry, Tammy, you didn't give us a 90-day notice. You're here for another year, so hugely important question there, right? Has that ever happened to
Okay.
you or no? Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I had the factoring company I stayed with the entire time that my business was open. They did me good. I mean, I didn't have any
Yeah.
problems with them. So,
Yeah.
but I
No,
also
that's good.
demand. I'm high maintenance. I will tell you, like I do business. My car salesman will tell you the same thing. When I do business with anybody, I let them know what my expectations are up front, and if you can't meet that, I won't do business with you. I mean, I'm pretty blunt about that. I don't mess around when it comes with to business. So,
For
um,
sure.
if you're not returning my calls, you're not answering me. Then if I have an emergency or I'm stuck at a broker or you're not going to be there to help me when I need it, then I don't want to do business with you. I think accountability and dependability are huge things,
Absolutely.
especially in trucking.
Yeah, for sure.
So
So the next questions are the obvious one. What is my rate? But behind that, what are your extra fees? A lot of
yes,
companies will have all these, and some of them, just a ton of them, that can cripple you. Extra fees behind it. Like getting charged $5 for every invoice that you upload to the system. Like, no, we're not going to do
really,
that. Oh yeah, it's everywhere. And that's
I
usually for your companies that are advertising that 1.5-2% rate for a brand new one truck carrier. They're going to get that money somewhere
some
else,
yeah yeah
unfortunately.
yeah.
So it's out
Ooh.
there. We covered what happens if a broker doesn't pay back. So I think kind of at this point we know, hey, if the broker doesn't pay the factoring company back, now we kind of know what recourse and non-recourse is. And if someone's telling you we're true non-recourse, go ahead and raise another maybe red flag there, right? Because you're dealing
Right.
with a lender. Okay. Um, do you check my credit if I apply? There's no red flag if they say yes. It's more of a personal preference for you, right? A lot of people just do not want that little ding on their credit report, and you cannot blame them. So maybe you butt up against one of those factoring companies that's a requirement and you're uncomfortable with it, just go ahead and back away and don't fill out any forms. Find someone who doesn't require that credit check. uh, Are there any fees or deposits required to start? You'll hit companies that will charge you if you fill out their factoring application. Sometimes you'll see $100, or to open up your account once you get approved, now you owe them $1,000. That's certainly out there. You should not be doing that. One that I really like is ask the factoring rep for any carrier references. Just get it, try to get on a call with that factory rep. If they've been around a while, they have a large, book of business. Uh, Try to get on the phone with one or two of them. You shouldn't feel bad about asking that. If they say no, then I can't imagine a reason they would say no, except maybe they're hiding something. But you know, if I'm starting a trucking company and I don't already have a network built of my own, then I don't think it's inappropriate to ask that factoring rep, for some
No,
references
because
to talk to.
this is your money and your cash flow. So, the average truck brings in over 200,000, or should be bringing in over 200,000 a year, well over. I mean, back when it was good, you were looking at more like 350,000 a year. So that's a lot of money to be cycling through a factoring company. So they should be willing and able to answer all those questions for you and be transparent. And if they can't, then your money doesn't need to go there. It's just like walking into a bank, right? You're not going to walk into a bank and put your as checking or savings account with somebody who's not going to give you all their fees and be upfront with you.
You're exactly right. And we're almost to the end here in terms of the questions. But if I apply, not sign a contract, but if I apply, are you going to file a UCC filing on me? I've had it happen so many times where I have a client referred to me, or a prospect, I guess, at that point. Hey, Andy, I would love to sign up with your factoring company. I get them to apply, and they sign the contract. But during our due diligence period, oh no, there's a UCC filed on them. We can't move forward until we address that and get it out of the way. So, hey, I see so and so company filed a UCC filing on you 2 days ago. What happened there? They're kind of stopping us from moving forward. Well, I just filled out their application. I never signed a contract, but unfortunately, a lot of times, just carriers will fill out that application because maybe they're even told, hey, we'll get you a rate offer, but you got to fill this out first. Well, you might have just locked yourself in. Now you don't have any more choices. So
How does that work? I mean, I've never heard of that. So just by filling out the application, is there any verbiage on the application that carriers need to look for when filling out an application?
there can be fine print, but a lot of times the carrier's rushing through it because they want to hear that rate offer, right? But what I try to do up front before I even put an application in front of a prospect, I tell them what the rate is. Hey, here's where we're going to be at, right? Because I already know, I kind of know their stats, I know their units, I know, what they're probably going to be running a month. There's really no reason that I shouldn't be able to tell them, at least a very tight range of where their rate's going to be at. So if we agree to that verbally, then, we're probably comfortable, go ahead and fill out the paperwork and getting things moving. So that is one of my last pieces of advice is don't fill out paperwork. And this stretches way beyond factoring companies. Until you're sure that you're going to do business with that company, right? There's just you're just kind of hedging your bets. If at that point you've made your 5 or 10 factoring company calls and you know who you're going to go with, go ahead and get the paperwork signed and get to funding as quick as you can. But other than that, as you're still vetting out companies, just don't put your signature or information on anything quite yet.
Yeah, I'm just as guilty as the next person about skimming the fine print. So, if you guys are looking at factoring companies, heed this advice. This is obviously a situation where you want to read the fine print and not put yourself in a situation that you can't get out of.
For sure. Yeah.
So,
So
that is a lot of great questions. So, besides the logistics, the fuel card, is there anything else that you would like to add the single point capital provides to their carriers? Any other services?
there is, and first of all, let me tell you, the reason I moved here from my former company is because of the service itself. I kind of got beat down for a couple of years of, my former company was so large, and I could feel the strain on my clients that they weren't getting the support they needed because they were calling me all the time, desperate for help. And that even got so stressful on me. So I can imagine how much stress they're going through if that trickles down all the way to me as their original salesperson, right? So, um, just going to a smaller company who has the time, who has the resources, who has the space, has in the funniest way changed my life and relieved me of so much stress. It's been so much better. But to actually answer your question, we do offer insurance as well. So we provide insurance and insurance down payment assistance if it's needed. So on the assistance side, we'll fund up to 50% of your initial down payment if everything's approved. But the thing to know is on that side, we do require a credit check on that. So the factoring part, we certainly don't. But if we're going to, fund and help the insurance down payment, we'll have to check the personal credit first.
Yeah, because that's a pretty big chunk. I mean, most down
Mhm.
payments are a significant amount.
Unfortunately, yes. Yep.
Yeah, so I can see that. And does your insurance, obviously you represent multiple companies so that you're able to shop the best rates, or do you guys just have one insurance company that you use?
We're building it out. This is brand new to us as of last year. So we're providing Geico right now. And a lot of the reason we're doing this is we have a lot of clients who want everything in one spot. As much as reasonable, right? Just have everything just built in together with insurance, fuel, this, that. I think we'll build that out more, but even more importantly, we have so many partners on the dispatching side and the insurance side where if our insurance isn't the best for you, then by all means, go somewhere else, do what's best for you. You're crazy not to, but we have so many partners that we trust that we would, love referring our clients to help them out and get them steady and get them where they need to be.
And a lot of people don't understand. I actually started on the insurance and risk management side. So I handle commercial lines. I own two agencies back in my earlier career.
This is news to
So
me.
yeah, that's where I started before I came to this side of it. But you're limited on how many companies that you can go to get insurance for a trucking company. There are only so many out there. It's not like every or every insurance company offers insurance coverages for a trucking company. So what you're really going to be looking for is the agency and the agent that you're going to be dealing with. So you do want someone that's going to pick up the phone, that's going to be there to answer your questions, going to make sure that you're well covered, and in the event of a claim is accessible. And I'm sure with service being Single Point Capital's main focus, that you're going to be carrying that service on to every part, every little arm that you guys have, whether it's fuel
Mhm.
cards, logistics, or insurance.
Yep, it is. We're all in the same office. We're all working together face to face, which expedites a whole lot. I can just, go down the hall and solve a problem in 20 seconds instead of waiting 20 minutes for an email to come back. So everything's very efficient, very customer friendly and customer focused. So, um, yeah, that is probably one of the last pieces of advice I would say is leverage your current network for their instant network as well, right? Even if it is a factoring company, because like I said, I personally know, and one of them as well now, some very good dispatchers out there that you
Mrs.
can
B.
trust. Yes, yep. And you spoke to her a couple days ago on here, and that was such a fun listen. But use us to your benefit beyond factoring or beyond insurance or beyond our brokerage. We've been around for 17, 18 years. We have a massive network. We've made some even mistakes years ago that we've learned from that we'd love to go ahead and tell you about so you don't make the same mistake or you know um, just build a trusted network. It is my biggest piece of advice I think I could say because it's just so hard to do alone, I believe.
It is. And it's one thing when you're already an established carrier, but what I learned from my own personal experience is when you first come out here, your first 2 years are really hard. And
Mhm.
there's not always open doors for your first 2 years. So whether it's insurance, and I'm not familiar with Geico. I imagine they take new carriers.
Mhm.
Some insurance companies do not. And so you run into a lot of roadblocks as a new carrier. So it's really important to align yourself with somebody who has products that cater to your experience level. And I really like the single point capital does that. It really helps out because we're always going to have new carriers and somebody needs to hold their hand and get them started and educate them.
You're exactly right. So, we're not the only ones, and we've never claimed to be that kind of pull a lot of these pieces together for you, but we certainly can, right? Even down to ELD connections and things like that. Regulatory companies that can help you out with all your filings and paperwork. We know them all. We know the good ones and the bad ones, and are more than happy to put the good ones in front of you.
Yeah, Andy's the networking guy. If he doesn't do it, he can point you in the direction of who can. I mean, he set me up with Mrs. V and I loved her to death. So, you are definitely the go-to guy. All right, guys. Well, that is going to be it for Trucking with Tammy today. I am going to be putting in a special link on all the posts, the website. Obviously, it's not going to be on the podcast platforms, but if you go to truckingwithtammy.com or if you see me over on Facebook, LinkedIn, X, or TikTok, of course, I'll post a link for a simple point, and that'll direct you to their products. And then if you have any questions or concerns or want to get hooked up, you'll be able to talk to a rep straight with them. Other than that, thanks to everybody for hanging out. I hope you learned something new. This is Tammy with Trucking with Tammy, and we'll see you next time.